we recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
Any questions for Steve?
Any reaction to the attacks between India and Pakistan?
No, it's a shame. We just heard about it just as we were walking in the doors of the Oval. Just heard about it. I guess people knew something was going to happen based on a little bit of the past. They've been fighting for a long time. You know, they've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries, actually, if you really think about it. No, I just hope it ends very quickly.
פעמים רבות שמי שתוקף את מדינת ישראל תעמוד בראשו. אתמול אמרתי שהתקיפה של החות'ים תענה לא בזבנג וגמרנו, אלא בזבנגים. אז אתמול נתנו זבנג, מכה קשה, לנמל חודדה. היום מטוסינו תקפו את שדה התעופה בסנה, שדה התעופה שמאפשר את צבא הטרור ואת הכניסה האווירית למדינת הטרור שמאפשרת את ירי הטילים נגדנו. הבחירה שלנו מתי להגיב, איך להגיב ועל איזה מטרות להגיב, זה שיקול שאנחנו עושים כל פעם, וזה נוגע גם לפטרון של החות'ים, איראן, שבלעדי האישור שלהם והתמיכה שלהם, לאורך זמן החות'ים לא יכולים לקיים את מתקפת הטילים הנפשעת עלינו. הנשיא טראמפ אמר את זה לפני חודש וחצי, אני אומר את זה גם היום. אנחנו נבוא חשבון עם כל מי שתוקף את מדינת ישראל. ואני רוצה לברך בהזדמנות זאת את הרמטכ"ל, אותך מח"א, את המודיעין, את צוותי האוויר והקרקע המופלאים שלנו, הטייסים הנהדרים שלנו, וכל מי שמסייע באדם. ברכות על ביצוע מושלם.
Битву трудную вели, этот день мы приближали к
Только пули свистят по снегу, только ветер гудит в проводах, тускло звезды мерцают. Ей встречались не раз мы в степи.
Welcome back to the SCIF, my friends, and welcome to the fourth turning. We are in it now. I tell you what, the wars are popping off everywhere, and we're going to read about this a little later in the show, but the fourth turning is a generational shift where all the corrupt establishment has to be destroyed so that a new global order can be put in place. And we're seeing that right now, and we're going to talk about all this. And what does it impact? It impacts you, your sons and daughters in the wars, and it impacts your money and the markets. So we're going to talk about all that. I want to say hello to the crew. You're cleared hot in the chat, so thanks for joining us today. I'm L Todd Wood. This is the SCIF, and this is your mission brief. Trump, is he angry at Israel? Really interesting things happening right now with the Trump administration and the Israeli government and the peace plans in the Middle East and the wars. So the ceasefire with the Houthis is part of that. That's number two. So how did Trump do a ceasefire with the Houthis in the Red Sea, but says that Israel, he doesn't care if they continue to be attacked, essentially. And India attacks Pakistan. Will it continue? Will that war continue? Kadyrov in Chechnya wants out. This is really interesting. I've spent time in Chechnya. We'll talk about that. And then trade progress with China. Wow. Just so much going on out there. We're going to get into all of it. I've got Tom Teague. We're going to talk financial markets right off the bat. And then Colonel Rob Maness at the top of the hour to dig into the wars, and more wars. So this is the SCIF. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back after this break. Stay with us.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our CDM.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Welcome back to the SCIF. So you saw in the cold open the fire and the destruction at Yemen and the airport at Sana'a. Massive destruction by the Israelis on the airport there, the facilities. And this is right after this, Trump signed a ceasefire through the Omani representatives, and basically said, we're not going to fire on the Houthis anymore. But if Israel does it, that's fine if they keep going. So that is really important. We're going to save that for later in the show. We're going to dig into it heavily. You saw the Immortal Regiment there. That was from a couple years ago, because it's going to happen here, I think, tomorrow or on the 9th, which is the Victory Day in Moscow. I mean, that is a representation of 20 million people who were killed by the Nazis in the Soviet Union at that point. And that still is a scar on their society, and it's why they keep celebrating this every year, and it's why they are trying to have this parade in Moscow in a couple days. Zelensky's saying he's going to bomb it. So that is, Putin wanted a ceasefire. Zelensky said no. It's very interesting. We're going to be watching this. This is a huge freaking story. So the Immortal Regiment is huge. It happens every year at the Victory Day Parade, and we'll dive into that more. And Mr. Trump, unpredictable. I want to bring in Tom Teague right now. Tom, are we watching the master at work, Mr. Trump? What do you think, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the market had him completely wrong in how China would react wrong. I personally didn't expect China to roll over this quickly. There's been a ton of propaganda about, coming out of China about how, inefficient the U.S. is and how great they are. And you're seeing some data that's suggesting that they're really suffering. I think exports are down massively, like the biggest in 15 years. You've had yuan bonds, like yields collapsing, which is kind of odd because we spoke last time. Their debt to GDP is, if you include the local stuff, is higher than ours, around 100.
It's like 300%, right? I mean, it's way up there.
It's way up there.
It's all a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, and overnight they were trying to do some stuff to increase liquidity in the system. So,
I saw that,
I like, at the end of the day, I think many of the asks of the Trump administration are not absurd. They're about, preserving IP and fentanyl and, ridiculous predator dumping and currency manipulation. And these are all things. Most of the market, I think, believes that China needs to do something. I think Trump's gone into this thing very strong, and I'm actually surprised at how little resolve they did have China in the end. So it seems to be working.
Well, as you said, the pictures coming out of the harbors that are empty, the ships that are not moving,
correct,
the factories that are shutting down. I mean, the people that are going unemployed, people, just worried about their entire livelihoods disappearing in China, because you build a factory and all of a sudden your entire customer base goes away just like that.
Gone. That's right.
I mean, how do you don't survive that, right? So that puts
the U.S. is a monopsony. So the U.S. is actually the world's buyer of all these products from everybody. And I mean, again, I think if people look at this, and too many people were very sort of myopic when they initially saw it, but it's about a lot more than just, the trade imbalances. It's about the supply chains. It's about, I mentioned it last time, what happened at the end of COVID when China opened up so late and gummed up the supply chains globally, which caused massive inflation in this country. And it's about not being reliant on that anymore and moving the precision industries, away from China when possible.
So Europe today said that we can't do Ukraine alone, not to switch out of that, but I think it factors into the markets and with Europe. I mean, I think Europe is getting in bed with China, but they still say we need the U.S. to solve our problems. I mean, you spend a lot of time in Europe. I think you're going there soon. What's the feeling you get from over there, from your contacts?
I think that Europe is definitely way more invested in from an ideological standpoint in this Ukraine issue, and I think it's all about Russia, less about the invasion, but it's been about Russia, and I think it's something that the U.S. has helped along the way. Obviously, you know a lot about that. I think Europe's an interesting place because there's a huge fight internally in Europe between populists who don't really want the war and the EU bureaucrats who are benefiting from it and do want it. And I noticed the other night they were saying that they're going to try and not import any oil and gas, I believe, from Russia by 2027, which is a complete...
That's a pipe dream, isn't it?
Yeah. No pun intended.
Yeah, no kidding. That was good. Did you see what I did there?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's unrealistic, and they're living in a dream world about the goals. They think that they're somehow going to convince Russia to give back Crimea, and that's just not going to happen. So they're sort of delaying this thing. And I watched your little segment beforehand talking about the VE Day celebration in Russia, and which is a huge thing. And Ukraine, I think, has a lifeline from all these globalists, because there's a lot at stake if Putin goes down.
Yeah.
Russia's the richest country mineral wise in the world. And that's what the real play is. It's about getting rid of Putin. And I just, I've listened to people along the way say that he's going to be gone. It just doesn't look like it's going to happen. No. I think he's got huge popularity internally. And I think they've won this conflict, basically.
Yeah. Putin said the other day, I'm starting to look at, successors. I found that interesting. I think he is getting older. The new Russia that comes, oh, wow. I mean, that's going to be really interesting who gets that power. I mean, any thoughts on that? I haven't even looked at it, but
I have no idea. I mean, I think Russia has a deep state like we do. So, I mean, I think there's, again, there's more going on there, but I just would like for us to sort of get back to, I don't think that we're in any beneficial situation by having Russia be the big enemy. I think we now know who our real adversary is, and it's China. And I think Russia in the long term has very similar goals that we do.
It's Russia's enemy too, whether they know it or not.
Right. Absolutely. I think there's like a quiet, uncomfortable nature between Russia and China. And I think they do things notionally just to sort of stand against America when it suits. But I think in the long term, their sort of goals and our goals are intertwined.
Completely. Well, let's talk markets. The 10-year hasn't really moved. I mean, it's sitting around 430.
428. Yeah.
I mean,
I've noticed the Fed's been buying some bonds. So, maybe supporting that a little bit. We've got the Fed out today at 2:00. I think the Fed is actively working against Trump's policies. I think that it's a huge stretch. The sort of talk is that the Fed's going to come out today and say that their targets for end of year PCE are around 3.5-4%, which is way above their target of 2%. I think that's ridiculous because they have no knowledge of how that's going to pan out or how long these tariffs are going to exist and how long we can keep them on at these levels. I don't think anybody believes that 10% tariffs across the board are going to cause that sort of level of inflation.
Well, it's just, speaking of inflation, it's just your lived experience. I was in Trader Joe's yesterday. Eggs are down to about $3 a dozen.
Absolutely.
There's no restrictions on them anymore. You can buy as many as you want.
Absolutely.
You can only buy one. Yeah.
Well, when you have a bird virus and people are slaughtering chickens right, left, and center. And if you remember, when we were coming out of COVID, there were all these fires in plants randomly all over the US. So, and the other thing about inflation was that we had so many restaurants closing down during COVID that farmers had to get rid of their fixed costs. So they got rid of their inventory. They got rid of animals. They sent animals to slaughter. So coming out of this, they had to rebuild, and that took time. And that's why, one of the reasons inflation is coming down. My view is the Fed should be lowering rates also because you want to get more capacity on for products, farm products, and working capital is still very expensive, and we're still in restrictive mode by at least 150 basis points on Fed funds. So there's room to cut. I think the Fed is sort of an arm. This sounds ridiculous, but I think the Fed is sort of an arm of the globalists. And
I don't think that's ridiculous at all. I think it's spot on.
And I think they're going to try and fight these tariff policies and everything else Trump does. And I don't think, I think everyone's aware that Trump and Powell don't get along. And Powell is very much a guy that has to move things and get involved all the time. Sometimes he shouldn't be. He's also late for everything. They've said that their goal is to be data driven, but they're looking out in the future, and that's not data driven. That's forecasting. And so, I mean, I guess the general consensus is by June, if unemployment starts employment starts dropping and unemployment's up, that we'll have a rate cut in June. But I think they're going to be late, and data's not really getting that much softer right now. Consumers still looking fairly strong. And the interesting thing is a lot of the jobs that are going are government jobs.
Yeah, totally.
So, which is a cost center. It's not a profit center, right? So, I mean, that's sort of a good thing in the end of the day.
Well, I'm looking at the property market in DC, and it's collapsing. I mean, it's amazing.
I've heard that as well.
That was the imperial capital. But Besant came out and said that the economy is actually growing. Did you see that?
Well, the last GDP print was down 30 basis points for the quarter. And I think a lot of that, like 283 basis points, was imports, which people were trying to get ahead of the tariffs. Yeah. So it's not really that bad at all. And I think in the private sector, it's still okay. There's definitely delays in business spending and investment because people have to know where they are with tariffs. But I think, people are getting around to believing that some of these tariffs, well, in particular, China, might not be a long-term thing. We might come to some resolution. And the one thing about Trump that is impressive to me is that he's not really an ideologue. He doesn't get stuck on things.
Exactly.
So when he needed to pivot, he pivoted. And, that was a smart thing to do. If you're an ideologue, you stay the course and you wreck everything. So I think it's
and you start World War III like the last.
Right, exactly. I think it's generally, I don't think he looks at China. I think he recognizes that China is a threat to the U.S. I think he recognizes that China does a lot of bad things to the U.S. But I think he also recognizes that in some way, in capacity, we need China right now, and we need to make things smooth, and it suits us both better if we work together. So I think he can make peace with people fairly quickly, and that's a good thing.
Speaking of peace, he says he's going to make a huge announcement. I immediately went to Ukraine war ceasefire, but I don't know if that's it. Any ideas on your part?
No, well, he said it's not tariff related as well. So, I mean, sometimes you get sucked into the game show a little bit.
Yeah, you totally do.
He may be saying that to kind of hedge himself against the Fed today.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. We'll see what happens. Wow, this Canada thing. Did you see him work over Carney in the Oval Office?
Unbelievable.
I found that fascinating.
Unbelievable. It was so pleasing for me. I mean, Carney is a major globalist.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said to me, Trump messed up because he got Carney elected. And there's a part of me that believes that sometimes the best thing is to let the far left have control for a bit, because they screw things up so badly that eventually people will recognize that and get rid of him. I mean, and in a way, even Trump himself, if he'd have been elected to a second term consecutively, that would have been, a very difficult time for him, and we wouldn't have gotten anything done. So we saw what the left did under Biden and how bad it was. I mean, it was just complete chaos, complete open borders, military reshuffling,
suicide.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is. It's like a death cult, the left.
Totally, man. So tariffs, Besant is going to Switzerland. What do you think is going to happen there? Trump says the tariffs are coming down, and China's already removed like 30% of tariffs on the U.S. Did you see that?
I would hope they would come down, because I think they're actually, on the ground, there's a lot of people who are getting hurt, smaller businesses that are getting hurt by this. So I would hope that this is a way to do it. But with the Chinese, there's all this like face saving, and we're going to show up and then we're going to walk away. And so there could be some of that, but hopefully there is a de-escalation of these tariffs, and that is an outcome of this summit they're having in Switzerland. Yeah.
Anything else, Tom, you want to talk about?
No, I think markets are probably going to be very choppy. We're sort of the S&P's sort of butting into its 200-day, which is going to be a big resistance level at 58.63. And we're through like sort of the big part of the earnings. Retail's coming, so I think we're going to be very choppy and headline driven for a while.
I agree. But I think we're in the fourth turning. So, last question: what do you think the new world order looks like in the end once we get through this? I don't think it's going to be globalist, but what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on
Well,
that?
I mean, I think right now, and like I said earlier, I think you can't just look at what Trump's doing. If you connect everything in its totality, whether it's what he's doing with the universities, what he's doing with the organizations that Doge is cutting, like USAID, all of these sort of off balance sheet deep state organizations, and you look at the tariffs and what he's doing with these countries, I think we're right now, and you look at Europe, you look at Romania, you look at what happened with the AfD in Germany, you look at what's going on with the UK. I think there's I'm hoping the new world order is more of a populist sort of integration. I think that's what we're going to have. And nationalism is not a bad thing. Sovereignty, democracy, those are all positives. And I think I'm hoping that this stuff pushes the sort of WEF and the new world order aside.
Totally. So I said last question, but this is the last question. We were sitting right there where you are back on November 20th or November 3rd, and he won. Did you think we'd make this much progress?
No way.
No way.
And it's also, I think this is a time of revelation. I think that's like we're literally seeing so many things come to light that we had no idea. And this is going to be a great awakening, I think, for the country and the world. And it's he's hitting so many spots in one go that it's hard for them to keep up. And he's indefatigable. I mean, that guy is incredible.
Agreed. Tom, thank you very much, my friend.
Got it. Anytime.
Ciao. The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human to human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human to human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
And these food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Appreciate you joining us today. We talked about the markets. Now we're going to talk about the wars. So President Trump signed a ceasefire with the Houthis in Yemen, which is the Islamic faction down south of Saudi Arabia on the Gulf that has been firing on Red Sea shipping and costing the United States a gazillion dollars on weapon systems. And we've expended a lot of our stores in the region. You know, we talked about last week that Trump could lose a carrier in the region. I think he realized this needed to be settled, and I think he settled it and made a deal. And the Houthis are no longer going to fire on the Red Sea. But in the Oval Office, a reporter asked Trump, you know, what about firing on Israel? And he said, literally, he said, I'm fine with that. So he has, at least on paper, thrown Israel under the bus here. And it's caused a lot of angst in Israel. This is the article we have up on CDM Press right now that on the whole attacks on the Houthis and what's going on in Israel. And the Houthis say attacks on Israel will continue. And that's the latest update after Oman negotiated the deal. This has caused a lot of real angst in Jerusalem and among the class of the Israeli, I guess, journalistic class. And I'll bring this up. That is what we have on our Israeli site, angst in Jerusalem as Trump distances himself from Israel. And is it a negotiation tactic or a reaction to the Israel lobby? So there's a lot of backdrops here. One is Mike Waltz. He was demoted. You know, they say it's not a demotion because he went to the ambassador to the UN. I don't believe that. There's reporting that he was talking offline behind the president's back, kind of Mark Milley style, to Benjamin Netanyahu about what's going on in the Oval Office. There's also reports that he was archiving Signal chat group pages and then putting them on an app the Israeli intelligence could access. So there's one possibility that Trump's really pissed off at Israel over this. He got rid of Waltz and his compadre Wong in the National Security Council. Marco Rubio took over that spot. There's rumors that Mike Flynn might come back. I don't know. But that spot is going to be there for 6 months, according to the White House, that Rubio will be in the National Security Advisor position. So you have Trump possibly angered at Israel, angry, but you also have, Trump strategic ambiguity. I mean, this is classic Trump, art of the deal, unpredictable, leadership style. And that this could all be part of that. I mean, he's over in the Middle East. He said he's not going to Israel on his Middle Eastern trip. He's over there to negotiate further with Iran, and he's going to be talking to Saudi and all of these people. He's very focused on Saudi and getting a deal out of Saudi Arabia. And if you scroll up on this article's on cdm.press, you will find a very interesting analysis by an Israeli journalist, essentially saying that he is using his negotiation methods that include chaos and uncertainty, specifically against the Iranians and the Houthis, with the aim of achieving achievements and successes with the Saudis and Qataris next week. We're talking massive amounts of investment that could come into the U.S., and so there's definitely a lot going on behind the scenes here, and we're going to continue to report on this story. And I guarantee you, We are the only ones talking about this. I mean, try to find this story on any of the mainstream or legacy media, at least our slant to it and our analysis of it. It just doesn't exist. Nobody's saying on this what we are saying. So that is really, really important as we go forward. Now, we all know about the war in Pakistan and India. India attacked Pakistan after the terror attacks in Kashmir. I still find the timing of this very, very curious and disturbing. I think likely that China is behind this, or the globalists to some extent, because Kashmir is standing in the way of Pakistan trade with China, and India's in the way. And guess what? All the iPhone business out of China just moved where? Just moved to India. So a lot more, again, going on here than just a war on the border. You're talking massive trade. You're talking geopolitical influence. You're talking population, depopulation. China has a real problem. Who'd have thought that if you massacre, millions of girls in the womb in China, and you would come to a day where men have no wives, and your population starts declining at a rapid rate. So that's where China is due to the one-child policy. India has no problem having children. So their population is growing. They're bigger than China now. There's a lot of jealousy, and the Chinese economy essentially could collapse. You could see the fall of the Chinese Communist Party. You really could. And we are to that point. And so that all of that may have been influencing this outcome in the war. So Pakistan is now saying they're going to strike back against India at their time of choosing. India is saying, look, we just hit the madrasas where the terrorists were being trained along the border. But it was a pretty big attack, 25 plus missiles, plus multiple jets were shot down on the Indian side. Who knows if they were involved in the attacks also, which talks to equipment. And the one thing that's coming out of all this is that the missile technology all over the world, anti-aircraft missile technology and attack technology, ballistic and hypersonic missiles, are the future, and along with drones. So again, this showed that manned aircraft may not be the way to go. India attacked massively last night, these madrasas, and Pakistan is mulling what to do. Now, one of the big stories that we've been on for literally a decade is the relationship between the West, specifically the United States, and Russia, the Russian Federation, the rump of the Soviet Union, if you will. But the scar that lives on in Russia on the Great Patriotic War, as they call it, World War II, is immense. And they lost 20 million plus people. 20 million Russians were starved in Ukraine. Massive depopulation. These were Christians, by the way. You don't hear much about that, the Holodomor. I'm going to play this Immortal Regiment once again. These are Russians marching, remembering their veterans from World War II.
Битву трудную вели, этот день мы приближали, как
Только пули свистят по только ветер гудит в проводах, тускло звезды мерцают. Страшна, с ней встречались не раз мы в степи.
So I wanted to show you that just to show you the backdrop of what's going on in this conflict. Not trying to be pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian, but pro-history and pro-knowledge is what we're, and pro-truth is what we're about here. So the war is still raging on the front in Donbass, and the May 9th celebration, that what you just watched was a couple years ago. I think it was 2022. But the new parade will be shortly through Moscow. And I'm hearing in Moscow that all flights have been canceled, literally in and out of the city at all. The internet, or at least Twitter, or at least the Wi-Fi and GPS is being shut down in certain places. They're very concerned about, drones using GPS or whatever to target the parade in 2 days in Red Square. Zelensky has come out and said, yes, they should be worried, was his quote. So they struck Moscow just last night with I think most of them were shot down according to the press, but Putin came out and said, okay, let's have a ceasefire on May 9th because the Nazis were fighting in Ukraine at some point after the Banderas moved from the Nazi side to the Soviet side in West Ukraine during the Great Patriotic War. But the way Putin has skillfully put this propaganda together is that the Russian Federation is once again fighting Nazi movements in Ukraine and now in Europe. He's calling the EU, which you can't lie that the EU has become very tyrannical. They're putting people in jail. They're banning political parties in Romania, Germany. You can't get Rumble in France. Censorship coming out of Ursula von der Leyen in the EU, the EU commissioner. All this is playing into Putin's propaganda. So that's the drop, the set of this whole story. And as this approaches on May 9th, we're going to see what actually happens. And so again, a big, huge story that we're going to stay up on. So we'll be right back. We're going to take a break. At the top of the hour, we have Colonel Rob Maness.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have foot, slog, slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I want to give a shout out to our merch at armedforces.press. If you go to armedforces.press, top left is the store. They've got all kinds of cool merch, including a lot of gym wear to look good this summer, get gains in style in the gym. So check out the merch for somebody who has everything. It's a perfect gift. In addition, we talked about just there on the ad, the Nucleo Boost. This is the package. I take it every day. I had it before coming on the show here with some yogurt, and it is the real deal. It's not candy, but it does give you massive nutrition. I have felt a real difference in stamina and in our operations, our ability to just keep going and taking care of other problems. Other people have said, like John B. Wells said, I had a cut and it cleared up very, very fast, faster than normal. I do have to cut my nails all the time, but that's okay. I'll deal with that. If you get the subscription, if you go to cdmnutrition.com and get the subscription, it's cheaper. So check out the Nucleo Boost and protect yourself as we move into the final phases of the fourth turning here, which will change the world, in our opinion. In addition, the medical kits at the Wellness Company, twc.health/CDM. Check those out. Go on there and play around the website because it really interesting the way they are recreating and reimagining healthcare, from the emergency medical kits to the spike support formulas. If you have somebody who's been vaccinated and you want to get that spike protein out of their blood, there's studies that say that's been very effective. The spike protein can lead to a lot of ailments down the road. There's suggestions, and we don't have any proof of this, that it's turbo cancers, autoimmune diseases, etc. We just don't know how the spike protein is going to harm your immune system. But if you can, this has been shown in studies to clear it out. So check out the spike support formula, Ultimate Spike Detox at the Wellness Company. Check out their subscriptions. Check out their drug programs, everything, their doctor visits. Just a fantastic company that's been a big supporter of ours. So move off the matrix and talk to the Wellness Company and see what they have to offer. There's what we want to get back to is really Americana, and get back to the golden age. And there was a guy, Gordon Sinclair, in Canada. Some of you may have heard this, but I thought I'd play it just because I had remembered it from years ago, and it's just really a great way to envision what America should be and what it was and what it can be again. So I want to play this and just think back to what we knew even a decade ago about America and what we need to get back. So here we go.
I'm Gordon Sinclair, what they call a seasoned Canadian commentator on radio station CFRB in Toronto. And way back on the 5th day of June, I did an editorial about the Americans. It was titled, Let's Hear It for the Americans. Well, this had an enormous response, both from the United States and from Canada. And so we decided to put it on television, and therefore I'll read it. Now, normally when I'm on television, I don't wear glasses, but a fellow of my age, which is approaching 74, has to wear them to read, and so I'll put on the glasses and read the editorial and do the best I can. Here we go. The United States dollar took another pounding on German, French, and British exchanges this morning, hitting the lowest point ever known in West Germany. It has declined there by 41% since 1971, and this Canadian thinks it's time to speak up for the Americans as the most generous and possibly the least appreciated people in all the world. As long as 60 years ago, when I first started to read newspapers, I read of floods on the Yellow River and the Yangtze. Well, who rushed in with men and money to help? The Americans did, that's who. They have helped control floods on the Nile, the Amazon, the Ganges, and the Niger. Today, the rich bottomland of the Mississippi is underwater, and no foreign land has sent a dollar to help. Germany, Japan, and to a lesser extent Britain and Italy were lifted out of the debris of war by the Americans, who poured in billions of dollars and forgave other billions in debts. None of those countries is today paying even the interest on its remaining debts to the United States. When the franc was in danger of collapsing in 1956, it was the Americans who propped it up, and their reward was to be insulted and swindled on the streets of Paris. And I was there. I saw that. When distant cities are hit by earthquake, it's the United States that hurries in to help. Managua, Nicaragua, is one of the most recent examples. So far this spring, 59 American communities have been flattened by tornadoes. Nobody has helped. The Marshall Plan, the Truman Policy, pump billions upon billions of dollars into discouraged countries. And now newspapers in those countries are writing about the decadent, warmongering Americans. Now, I'd like to see just one of those countries that is gloating over the erosion of the United States dollar build its own airplanes. Come on now, you, let's hear it. Does any country in the world have a plane to equal a Boeing jumbo jet, the Lockheed TriStar, or the Douglas 10? If so, why don't they fly them? Why do all international lines except Russia fly American planes? Why does no other land on Earth even consider putting a man or a woman on the moon? You talk about Japanese technocracy and you get radios. You talk about German technocracy and you get automobiles. You talk about American technocracy and you find men on the moon, not once but several times, and safely home again. You talk about scandals and the Americans put theirs right in the store window for everybody to look at. Even the draft dodgers are not pursued and hounded. They're right here on our streets in Toronto. Most of them, unless they're breaking Canadian laws, are getting American dollars from Ma and Pa at home to spend up here. When the Americans get out of this bind, as they will, who could blame them if they said to hell with the rest of the world? Let somebody else buy the bonds. Let somebody else build or repair foreign dams or design foreign buildings that won't shake apart in earthquakes. When the railways of France and Germany and India were breaking down through age, it was the Americans who rebuilt them. When the Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central went broke, nobody loaned them an old caboose. Both of them are still broke. I can name to you 5,000 times when the Americans raced to the help of other people in trouble. Can you name to me even one time when someone else raced to the Americans in trouble? I don't think there was outside help even during the San Francisco earthquake. Our neighbors have faced it alone, and I'm one Canadian who is damn tired of hearing them kicked around. They'll come out of this thing with their flag high, and when they do, they're entitled to thumb their noses at the lands that are gloating over their present troubles. I hope Canada is not one of these. But there are many smug, self-righteous Canadians. And finally, the American Red Cross was told at its 48th annual meeting in New Orleans this morning that it was broke. This year's disasters, with the year less than half over, has taken it all, and nobody, but nobody, has helped.
Well, I wanted to play that just because to make you realize how far we've fallen, whether our technocracy, whether our generosity around the world. We've been infiltrated and captured by a corrupt, criminal, organized crime cabal. So we have to get America back. So that's one of the focuses on this show, because we believe that free media is the only way to do that. And so we are breaking stories every day. Put us in your daily scan, morning, noon, and night. Sign up for our no ad subscriptions because it really helps us. You get access to all 13 of our sites with no ads. But we are focused on breaking the block of corporate legacy media and rebuilding something new. And we want to be part of this new golden age. But just remember what America used to be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. Completely different, and those my age in the audience or older do remember that. So we'll be right back. We're going to have Colonel Tom Maness, Rob Maness at the top of the hour. We're going to talk war, and what's happening and where we're going with all this and how it figures into the fourth turning we're experiencing now. We'll be right back.
Okay, ready?
Ready.
So we're out in the field in South Dakota shooting pheasants, and we're coming out here to a Milo field you can see behind us, and I was throwing in an ALP, someone else was using a tobacco product, and then somebody, and I'm not going to name names, pulled that out in public at a hunt. And so that's obviously yesterday. What we have here, ALP, is tomorrow, and we're going to make that official by symbolically ending the long reign of this product. Willie Robertson happened to be hunting with us. We don't have a mechanical fur, but we do have former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. With an arm. Willie's got a 12 gauge. I've got my trusty 20, and we're going to see what we can do to usher out the Zen era. Yes! So, I should say, alppouch.com, for sale now, alppouch.com, usher in tomorrow a brand new world of nicotine pouches, the American Lip Pillow, on sale now.
Warning! This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Thanks for joining us today. We've talked a lot about finance in the first hour, but I told you we're going to talk war because they're popping off all over the world, and we want to get to the bottom of this. It is the fourth turning, which we've talked about, which is a generational change, and a new world order, for lack of a better term, will be established after we get through this period of destruction of the corrupt establishment, which is written in the book, The Fourth Turning, if you haven't read that. I want to bring in my good friend and fellow military officer, Colonel Rob Maness, who is an expert on all this. So we'll welcome the Colonel. Thank you for coming on, Rob. I appreciate your time. Last minute, I always call you, hey, man, can you come on tomorrow? And you always say yes. So thank you very much for that, because here we're kind of news driven. So when something happens, I have to get the right person, and you're the right person. So I wanted to ask you, let's start with what's going on in Yemen. There's a ceasefire the Omanis have arranged. And I found it fascinating that Trump said, well, what happens with Israel happens with Israel. I mean, is this art of the deal? Is he pissed off because of what happened with Waltz? I mean, what do you think?
No, I think with the president, well, first of all, thankfully, we have a president that's actually very clear when he talks about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't mince words. He doesn't nuance it. And that's a good thing, especially for our adversaries, so they don't do something really stupid.
Yeah.
I think he's focused on projecting the reality. And here's the reality. The reality is that while Israel is our most important ally in the region, most of us believe anyway, and that's written down in government documents like the National Security Strategy and those kinds of things. America, the commander in chief of the United States military, is focused on Iran. If you watched him at all yesterday in his comments about Iran, he said that they face a critical time, probably the most critical in the history of their nation. He's talking to them and telling them, "Hey, we've got your Houthis to stop doing what they're doing, but we're really focused on you." And I think that's where he was coming from in the answer about Israel, is that, look, Israel is going to do what they need to do to protect their people and their own national security interest. But the United States, and he even said this, I think while he was at the funeral, some reporter reported something to the effect, and I'll paraphrase it here, that when the reporter asked him, "Are you going to let Israel drag us into another Middle East war?" He looked at the reporter. He said, "If Iran doesn't give up their nuclear weapons program, the United States will not be dragged into anything. I will be leading the effort to remove it."
Yeah. No,
So,
that was pretty
that's the
striking.
perspective he's talking from. I think people need to always keep that in mind, I think.
And he did greenlight Israel. He said basically, you do what you need to do in Gaza and elsewhere. So I found that very, very interesting. And I want to play in a minute, but I guess this is a little off topic. But Pam Bondi is now saying that there's tens of thousands of tapes on Epstein. Did you see that come out? It was literally just come out.
Yeah, I saw it just a few minutes ago. I'm glad you asked about it. We can talk about that. I have time if you have time. Look, I have said it. You have said it. All of us in the independent media that have the courage and the guts to say, "We saw you pull the DVDs out of the island buildings, fellas. Where are they at? Who's on them?" The perpetrators, Epstein and his girlfriend Maxwell, they're perpetrators, yes, but they're just the pimps.
Yeah.
The customers are the real perpetrators here that haven't been held accountable. And it's because there's so many high-ranking individuals around the world, not just in the United States, many of them in the United States, as we know. And you can use conjecture to really confirm a lot of them. But around the world, like a member of the royal family, Prince Andrew, they are perpetrators in this. And it's a crime. These are crimes, sex trafficking of minors, sexual acts with minors. They're crime. I don't know of any country where that is not a crime in this world. So she had to come out. She had to come out and admit it, except California. Yeah, what's that guy's name out there? That state legislator that keeps getting reelected.
Yeah,
it's not Wiener. It's something else. But it's kind of like that. So she had to admit it at some point. And after the fiasco with the influencers and the notebooks and that were nothing burgers of what we already knew, and really those folks got embarrassed. I think some of them did, and I don't blame them for being embarrassed. They were tricked into a publicity stunt. Bondi's at some point had to come out and admit it, and that's basically what she was doing. Honestly, I wasn't expecting it, because I see her as more establishment than anything else, and she's never going to be a Matt Gaetz. But at least she came out and finally admitted the truth that there are tens of thousands of these things.
Well, she was, I don't know how involved, you could say involved in this whole thing when it went down, because she was the Florida AG. So, there's a connection there for sure. And I'd love to find out exactly. And she was, the Obama, the Zimmerman affair, all of that stuff. Hypersonic missiles, to stay on Israel for a minute. It was initially said it was a ballistic missile that hit Ben Gurion in Tel Aviv, the airport. But Brandon Weichert, we had him on Monday, and he said no, it was actually a hypersonic missile. Because the deal was the THAAD missile system or any of the Golden Dome did not stop it. I guess there was 4 tries, according to the reports from the Israelis. But Weichert's saying they have no defense to this type of missile. Do you know that about that? Is the THAAD system capable of taking down one of these things that's flying at such a fast speed?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure there have been software upgrades over the last few years to try to get these systems there, but I'm not aware of any yet that we fielded that can consistently and reliably first identify, track, and then the final phase there is the shoot down of that type of capability. They're lucky they were able to catch it, to see it coming. Because a lot of the radars, and again, assuming there's been a lot of software, they're all software driven these days. Assuming there's been a lot of software upgrades trying to fix that problem, I don't think we're there yet, honestly.
There's a follow-on to that in that the Zelensky's, we talked about in the first segment or first hour, the Immortal Regiment and the May Day parade is coming up on May 9th in the Red Square, and that Zelensky's threatening the whole system. But Putin came out, or at least I saw a report on one of the Telegram channels that Putin has authorized the use of the Orezhnik hypersonic ICBM into Kiev. If that happens, that's probably a threat, but I think it could become a reality. That's a hypersonic system. We really can't. I mean, he could send that to DC if he wanted to. I mean, that's something that the U.S. and that's why Trump, I guess, wants $1 trillion for the defense budget. A part of that is to develop these systems for the Golden Dome or whatever. Do you think is this another Reagan thing that's going to take 20 years? Can we put something up in the next 10 years to take care of this threat?
Yeah, I hope it's not another Reagan thing that takes 20 years and then we end up with a very piecemeal, built by committee capability that's not as effective as what we all know it could be based on current and emerging technology at the time. Donald Trump's a lot different than Ronald Reagan. So I think his perspective, his point of view, and the way he operates as a construction and real estate CEO will give us an advantage there. So I have high hopes that he'll get it done. Just the acknowledgement that we need a Golden Dome type system to provide adequate missile defense coverage to the entire United States, not just Alaska, so we can catch them coming over the pole. Is critically important because the hypersonics that we've seen demonstrated by the Chinese and the Russians now can literally just to put it in layman's terms, travel and bounce off the atmosphere back and forth, and then get to its speed at undetected, by the way, because our systems aren't focused on detecting something bouncing off the upper part of the atmosphere and traveling that fast. They could do that from any direction, anywhere around the world, and can be launched from much closer in than an ICBM or an SLBM even could be launched to hit these targets. So we have a lot of work to do, and I hope that Mr. Trump continues to press forward in a very, very rapid way, like he's doing in many things, not everything, but many things. Unfortunately, though, the Defense Department personnel I'm very concerned about it. I don't know that we've got the right people in the right places where the appointments have been made, and the staffs underneath them where the actings are in place are, I believe, actively working against the president.
Well, since we're a couple of Air Force officers or former, there was 2 events that happened in the last week that caught my eye. One was the naval drone that used, I think it was some AIM missiles to take down a Russian jet. And obviously that was U.S. technology that Ukrainians were using. It's a on the water drone. It was, loaded up with air to or ground to air missiles actually. And then the Indians allegedly lost 5 fighter jets last night. I thought there was a missile attack at first, but it looks like, Pakistan may have shot some of them down. So is the era of manned aircraft going away as a former long range bomber crew member?
No, I don't think so. I think as long as there are nuclear weapons deliverable by air breathing aircraft, there's going to be a man in the system at some point. But as far as air-to-air combat, I think you're going to see what we've been predicting for quite some time, where you have a lot less human beings and 1 or 2 human beings maybe tied to 50 wingmen that are operated semi-autonomously or almost completely autonomously, except for getting information from the aircraft that have the human beings in it.
Wow, interesting. Can you stay for one more segment?
Sure.
You have time? All right, we'll be right back. Quick break.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window, and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, "You use Alp?" "Yeah, I do," says my friend. "So do I," says the cop. "We all do." He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, "Drive safely, sir," and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine marriage.
So, Colonel, welcome back. Let's talk India. First of all, the timing of this is really interesting to me. Do you think this is anything other than just age-old hatred breaking out in terror attacks, or was it a spark that somebody planted? What say you?
Well, these type of attacks, especially terrorist attacks, are from one country onto another that can be confirmed like that, are always available in that border, in that line of control is what it's called there between Pakistan and India, and has been since Pakistan came into existence. So it's easy to, even if it's not a spark, to use it as a spark in the influence operation world. As we know now, it's a matter of seconds before the social media picks something like this up, and then the influence operation is off and running. And probably if I were people running that, it would be automatically done by artificial intelligence today, because Grok's got the capability to do that, in my opinion.
Wow. So you're thinking it's more about the influence op rather than the actual conflict on the ground, or what do you think?
Well, I'm just saying that it could be either one. It's age-old conflict. It's been there since, and America's been involved in it before, much more directly than we are now. But you were talking about, so it could be either one, but if I were running an influence op and I saw this happen, if I hadn't instigated it, I'd be using it instantly.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me that India's just took all of Apple's iPhone business from China, and the China's economy is hurting, and you've got Trump trying to bring peace and putting pressure on China, and then India's right in the way of Chinese direct trade with Pakistan through that border region. So, to me, it's Occam's razor. I look at, well, they may have started this, or the globalists who want to keep going, or it just may have just been a random terror attack, but it seemed pretty planned and well executed.
If I was placing a bet, I'd place it on the CCP through the Iranian nuclear program connection to the Pakistani nuclear program connection.
Interesting.
If I was a bet man, but you mentioned the fighters getting lost last night. Everybody needs to remember that the last time the American air forces, air-to-air air forces, went up against the Indian air-to-air forces, I believe, unless something's occurred since then, we got our butts waxed pretty badly there. And if the Indians just lost 5 jets last night in an operation against Pakistan has come up tremendously with the use of their F-16s and other capabilities there, if they were actually pulling it off with human beings in the cockpit.
Well, I think that the missile technology, this is what is striking me. I mean, we're coming into a missile future, right? Whether it's ballistic missiles to attack targets, whether it's shooting down, fast movers in the air, or, targeting specific tactical operations on the battlefield. I mean, this is all missile driven. The technology's there, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of tactics in defenses against it. So I'm sure the war machine in the U.S. is building those, but until that happens, I mean, I think we're pretty vulnerable in a lot of ways to this new technology.
Oh, critically vulnerable, and we
Yeah.
haven't, at least outwardly, in a open source perspective, we haven't taken the right steps in the United States Armed Forces to build offensive and defensive capabilities using small drone technology that you're seeing put to very good use on both sides of the war in Ukraine. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a revolution in military capability that is not really being paid much attention to. And that's disappointing because our teams are one of the things we are good at is creating new stuff with innovative ideas and getting it to the field very rapidly. We learned that hard lesson again in the Iraq War. It's unfortunate that we haven't taken that on, but we're focused on other things like trying to deter China when we haven't been putting the money in the pot to do that. We've been focused on this border war between Russia and Ukraine.
Well, the whole naval thing with enough ships and taking care of the old ships. I had Commander Salamander on recently, and we're talking about. He's saying, look, the first thing we need to do is take the money and fix the ships we got because they're rusting. He said they took some into the South Korean naval yards, and they were shocked at how much in bad shape the American vessels were in the U.S. Navy. So we got a lot of work to do there. Trump is saying that he's going to have a huge announcement soon that's going to be bigger than anything else prior to he leaves for the Middle East. Any thoughts on what that will be? I mean, I was telling Tom Teague in the first hour, my immediate thought was Ukraine war, ceasefire, but what do you think? Any ideas?
Well, he said it was going to be positive too. I watched the little clip of that a couple times yesterday because people kept asking me to be on their shows to talk about it. And this is purely, I don't know anybody. I don't talk to anybody in the administration on a regular basis. So I don't know anything, but my educated guess is that it could be, I mean, the biggest, most positive thing that he could announce on his way to the Middle East is that Iran has agreed to a verifiable set of conditions that they're dropping their nuclear weapons development program. They're going to roll back to a peacetime nuclear power thing, which is what their disguise is anyway of that program. So that would be probably the biggest, most positive thing for not just the Middle East, Israel, but Europe and eventually the United States, because eventually they'll get a missile that they can put a warhead on to hit New York City or Miami or something like that. And those people will use it. That's the problem. So I think that would be big, on a small, on a bigger scale, as big scale would be a peace deal that Putin has agreed to, that Zelensky could figure out how to attach himself to, because that guy, I tell you, the Putin offers a 3-day ceasefire over a set of days that everybody in Ukraine should be celebrating too, unless you were part of the Nazi army, which I guess some of those people are descendants of that in that part of the world. But everybody in Europe is celebrating it. We should be sending a delegation. I think President Trump should send a delegation to that victory parade because, without the Soviet Union losing 27 million people, think about that. The Western allies would never have achieved a total victory over Nazi Germany alone. There's no way. And we didn't lose nearly that many people. So we owe the Russian people a debt of gratitude that should be acknowledged at least on the anniversary of Victory Day, regardless of their ideology or whatever else is going on. And we shouldn't let a border war with their neighbor get in the way of that bigger picture. So anyway, but Zelensky can't find it in himself to stop killing his kids. So.
Yeah, I just find that sickening. Actually, I see the videos and it just makes me sick. It makes me angry. But there could be wrapped all into one big bow. I mean, Russia's behind or involved in all of this. I mean, obviously they're involved in the Ukraine war, but they're also involved in the Iranian situation. They may be, the grand deal may be, okay, sanctions come off Russia, the ceasefire in Ukraine, and guess what? Iran stops its nuclear program. So we get that, and the Russians get sanctions taken off. And oh, by the way, we're going to have massive economic deals on the Arctic Circle with Russia. I think that could be something like that.
That's why Donald Trump should have you in his administration. I wasn't thinking big enough. You were thinking big. You're exactly right. It very well could be. Very well could be. And I know we're thinking positive, and I'm skeptical, but I'm going to try to think positive about this because it's what I voted for.
Well, I mean,
and, what the world needs.
I was kind of down, or not down, but I was disappointed last week with a lot of the wars popping off again. But it looks like, Trump may be doing his thing. The last thing, if we sign a deal with Iran, yes, it would be good for Israel, but would it be good for certain Israeli politicians, and will they be happy or not? I think that's a big question, because I think Trump's kind of raining on their parade here, and they've said it. And a lot of the journalists are saying that right now. Last question. Any thoughts on that?
Well, the good news for the politicians in Israel is that he's taken the leash off that Biden and the entire government of the United States had on them, and they're free to defend themselves. And you know what? I don't think he would stand in their way if they felt the need to say some deal gets signed by Iran and the Israelis find out through their intelligence network, which is much better than ours because they still have a human intelligence network all over the Middle East and around the world, really, that the Iranians are cheating on it. I don't think a Trump administration or a President Trump for sure would be standing in their way. And I think those politicians know that privately, and they're saying one thing publicly, but no better privately, and are going to continue to do what they need to do to protect themselves.
Awesome insights. Why I wanted to have you on. Tell us about your show. Where can people follow you? All that stuff.
Yeah, the Rob Maness Show is live Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Eastern. And you can find us on X. We do a live simulcast to a live audience, and we take questions from my guests. Today is Whistleblower Wednesday, and we're talking about these issues, the three-front World War III that's occurring. Whether you realize it or not, there are three fronts in World War III. It's happening. It hasn't reached the level of the post-Pearl Harbor time in World War II, but it is happening. And David and I will be talking about all three fronts, and we'll talk a little bit about the movement of staff people off the National Security Council and somebody to the United Nations and all that, and the impact that's having.
So what time is the show?
3 o'clock Eastern to 4 o'clock Eastern.
Excellent. Everybody check it out. Colonel, thank you.
At Rob Maness.
We'll have you back down the road. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks,
Take care. Bye.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. The stores were shut down, and doctors' offices were shut down, and even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. You just pack a punch that, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. We think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's go 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the Alp again.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Big news coming out of the Russian Federation, in case you missed it. Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader of the Chechen Republic, is saying he wants to step down. We have experience in Chechnya as a media company on the ground talking to people, and this is a big deal. This is a Spartan state that Putin essentially runs or has Kadyrov run for him. There's a lot of money that flows into the Chechen Republic. It's an Islamic republic, and there were 2 wars fought in Chechnya back in the 90s, and that's what brought Putin to power, was his success in those wars. And so Ramzan, there's been a lot of, rumors of health issues. So we're going to stay on this and see where it goes. This could be just a ploy to, he does this from time to time, or he could really be stepping down. We don't know, but it's something we want to follow. And, Chechnya is not independent economically. They can't really survive, but they don't really, in our experience, don't really enjoy being Russian or under Russia. They'd rather have their own republic. So we'll see what happens there. I want to play this video real quick with Pam Bondi on the Epstein issue.
No, the FBI, the FBI, they're reviewing, there are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims, and no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going through that. I haven't seen that statement, but I'll call him later and find out.
So interesting. Again, the people want justice here, and they want to know which politicians were involved, which public figures. So we'll see if that comes out. Bessent is going to Switzerland on Thursday, tomorrow, and he's going to be meeting with Chinese officials on the tariffs. Another huge story, Trump's success, and the markets are rallying because of that. At least they were prior to the show. I haven't checked them recently, but this is what the uncertainty that the markets wanted taken away, and it looks like that may be happening. I think we'll probably end up at a much lower tariff position for China because they're hurting, as Tom Teague said in the first hour. But this is a good thing. Bessent and the trade representative Greer are going to Switzerland to meet with Chinese leaders on the tariff issue, and we expect some kind of deal. And then, wow, Katie bar the door, the markets will really take off because reportedly, there's 17 or 18 other countries right behind that ready to launch deals with the U.S. And then, wow, the golden age will be upon us. And speaking of the fourth turning, which we discussed with Tom Teague and Colonel Maness, the fourth turning is a theory that generationally it takes 4 cycles to destroy what the first generation had built, essentially. And we're going through that now, which is destruction of the old order and the beginning of the new world order or new global order. And that's where we're at. So all of these wars, all of this corruption, it all has to be, the wars can be a vehicle to get rid of the corruption, or it can be a vehicle for extinction. So this is a concept we're going to stay on here at CDM, the fourth turning, because it's important. And while our future and our children's future, which is really what we're concerned about, is all in it. So we're moving into the history portion of the program. I'm big into history. We're going to continue this the last half hour or so. Historical information that you need to know. We've been playing some of our war stories, interviews we've done. We're going to do, it's not just going to be war stories at the end of the show. We're going to have other types of history, but I'm a big believer in history because it rhymes and you need to understand it. And the reason we're in this war in Ukraine, in my humble opinion, is because nobody understood history, that the Nazis came through the exact region the Ukrainians are attacking in Kursk to try to take down the Russian Empire, as well as part of Napoleon's army. And you could look at the Polish, empire hundreds of years ago as well. So this is a historical area. You got to know the history so you can understand their viewpoint, even if you don't agree with them. So I did an interview with a gentleman. His name is Sam Fiola. He's a helicopter pilot and therefore something I'm highly interested in about his time in Vietnam. The Sea Wolves were a a Navy Special Operations Squadron flying UH-1s, which I have a few hundred hours in. And I found this just really interesting and early helicopter tactics. But again, history you need to know to live a good life. Here we go. Welcome to War Stories. It's a treat for me to today interview Sam Fiola. He retired. I think you retired in the reserves as a lieutenant commander, or did you not retire?
I did not retire.
Okay, but you flew UH-1s in Vietnam along with H-3s elsewhere, as I did in Alaska. So we have a lot to talk about, but we're going to discuss his time in the Sea Wolves. Scramble the Sea Wolves is the story. But welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Todd.
So let's start from the top. How did you get to Vietnam, and where did you go from there?
Well, I got to Vietnam purely, it's a volunteer squadron to begin with. Mm-hmm. And when I got my wings in Pensacola after 2 years of training, my first choice was to go to Vietnam because that's where the action was. Mm-hmm. And there were some instructor pilots from the Marine Corps and elsewhere that was pushing that a little bit and saying how exciting it was and what a great tour it would be. And so that's how I ended up going to Vietnam. I actually volunteered along with everybody else that went to that squadron. And it was right out of
well, I was going to say the SOF in the Navy is not as well developed. At least it wasn't then as it is today. How did this squadron come about? I mean, it was essentially a light attack squadron, right?
Yes. What happened was when the Vietnam War started, the Navy had riverine boats mm-hmm. in the canals and rivers of the South part in the 3 and 4 Corps. And they would get ambushed all the time and get shot up a lot. Mm-hmm. And so this is in the early days of the war. And so they asked the Army for help because the Navy wasn't even over there at that point, other than the riverine boats. So the Army provided support for a while, but they ran into some problems. They couldn't fly at night very much, couldn't fly in bad weather, and they were a long ways away from a quick reaction type of thing. So the Army says, why don't you guys go get your own Navy guys to fly for you and have them support you? And so that was a good idea. And the only problem was the Navy didn't own any Hueys. Hmm. So the Army said, well, we've got a bunch that we're surveying off our books. They're really at the end of their service life, but we'll give them to you if you want them. and the Navy said yes, and took about 30 of them or so. And they formed 9 detachments around 3 and 4 Corps. Mm-hmm. Half of them were based on LSTs in the major rivers, and one was in the Gulf of Thailand. Mm-hmm. And then the other half were pretty much on land-based at various places around. And so since the Navy didn't have any Hueys, they sent us to Fort Rucker, where you...
no, it will. Mother Rucker.
Yes. And so they trained us on the Hueys at Fort Rucker. And especially, well, we had to learn how to fly, first of all. And then most importantly, they taught us the tactics, how to do daisy chain flying with 2 helicopters. As one rolled off the target, the other one would roll in.
Yep.
And so that was the tactics they taught us. And then a couple weeks later, they sent us over to Vietnam.
Wow.
So we were just, fresh out of flight school, and our first assignments, and went to Vietnam. And so it started out at the headquarters for a couple weeks, and then they sent me up to a place called Tay Ninh, which is on the Cambodian border, and it was at the terminus of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Mm. So all night long, all day long, you could see trucks and headlights coming down through Cambodia, and then stopping across the river from us at Tay Ninh. And that's where they dispersed all the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese regulars down into the southern parts through the waterways, mostly on sampans and things like that, and just infiltrations across the border. And so that's where the riverine boats got into the business. They were trying to stop that. And so then we started flying for them. And a because the weather was pretty rough over there sometimes. The monsoon seasons was bad. The VC were mostly moving at night, so there was a lot of night flying. In fact, most of my flying was at night.
And you didn't have night vision goggles, right? This was all seat of the pants kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and no nav aids either. We didn't
Wow.
have any nav aids, so it was all VFR flying until you got into some bad rain or something. And we were instrument qualified. The Navy program. First thing I flew were fixed wing. I flew fixed wing for almost a year and a half, or about, I guess, a year, and then I switched over to helicopters towards the end of my flight training. So we were trained in instrument, in instruments, and also in overwater flight, and just we had the fixed wing part of our training. Carrier landings, we had to do that.
Yeah,
And
know it well. Yeah.
2 years of very intense training made us pretty capable of being able to fly.
So how did you I have a few hundred hours of H1s. It's a fun, what a blast to fly that machine. I mean, it was just a sports car. I mean, I loved flying the Huey, but how did you navigate at night? I mean, was it just finger on the map as far as you could tell, or did you have like a TACAN or a ADF put on a ship or something?
No, didn't have that. We used the moon, the moonlight and the starlight, so you could see in the cockpit. And if you look at you see your maps. We had a map, and it was just really knowing what your visual cues were. How the river bended. And
they teach you that at Fort Rucker really, really well, actually.
Yeah, I don't recall that part, but I'm sure that's where we learned how to do it. That was our only way to get around, was just having flown the territory a lot and knowing which ways the rivers flowed, and having a moonlight sometimes was both a curse and not, because they could see you as well as you could see down there.
Yeah.
I actually preferred flying at night because you could see where you were getting shot at, because you had the tracer fire coming at you. It would help tell you where the bad guys were and trying to shoot you down. So I didn't mind flying at night too much.
Was there no obstructions? You had to, because if you fly in the U.S. at night, you got to worry about power lines and all that. You didn't have that in Vietnam, right?
No, we didn't. But there was one thing that was important. Whenever we went out flying, we always had to worry about artillery. The Army was shooting artillery all over the place. And so as soon as you got on the airplane to take off to go to wherever your firefight was, you had to call the Army's artillery center to find out where they were shooting, so you could fly underneath it. So that was my biggest worry was, from a navigation standpoint, is not running into an artillery piece coming out of the sky.
Yeah, that would be bad. So continue your story. I interrupted you.
Anyway, we started flying for the Navy, which was a big help, I think. And we were always within what we called the scramble status. Whenever somebody got in trouble, mostly it was the riverine forces. That's who we were primarily there to fly for. But and also we flew SEALs all the time. We inserted them and picked them up, and that was a big part. In fact, if you talk to any SEAL, they know the story of the SEALs. They just dedicated some things at their museum. I think it's in North Carolina or Virginia, wherever their SEAL museum is, and their SEALs are very prevalent. So, but we were also flying for the Army. There was a lot of Army guys on the ground in the jungles and whatnot, and we would not turn down anybody. If somebody needed help, they called the SEALs. We went. Didn't matter who they were or where they were. So we could scramble. We were on a 12-hour on, 12 hours off, generally is how our shift worked. And we would be, as soon as you got the call, there was a landline in our hooch that whenever that crank phone went off, started jiggling, everybody jumped and ran for the helicopters. And we could be airborne within 3 minutes.
Wow, that's tight.
Yeah.
So you've got some stories you wanted to tell us.
Yeah, so probably the most significant one for me personally was the night that I won the Distinguished Flying Cross. It was we were flying up in Mukwa, which is also on the Cambodian border, and there was a Special Forces field office there, and they had some riverboats from the Navy. So it's kind of a outpost. And we were flying a lot of missions up there because that's where a lot of their activity was. A lot of the VC and NDA were coming across down through Mukwa to get down into the southern parts of the waterways in Vietnam. And so we were flying there a lot. And the VC didn't like that. In fact, they put a bounty on the head of every sea wolf.
Wow.
If they could kill us or shoot us down. So we were in Mukwa. We went to a briefing at the Special Forces post, and they said, we've had some activity, and our Navy guys are out on the water, and we want you to know that an armored personnel carrier had been captured by the VC the week before. And they said when they got this thing, they got a minigun mounted on it, and we haven't found it yet. So just want you to FYI. So that night we were back across the river, just on a standby mode, waiting for anything to happen. And all of a sudden, about 2 or 3 in the morning, it was like the 4th of July. You could see it where we were sitting beside our helicopters. Just tracers went off all over the place, loud booms from rockets or grenades or whatever, just went crazy. And so obviously we were being scrambled. And we got in our helicopters and we took off, and then we flew in pairs. So I was the co-pilot of the lead helicopter. So my responsibility was navigation and communication. Along with the co-pilot always shot the miniguns. We had 2 miniguns, 1 on each side, and we had 2 7-shot rockets pods on each side, and which the pilot shot. And then we had 2 door gunners with M60 machine guns, what we call freehand. So they just had gun over their shoulder kind of thing, leaning out. They had a tether belt on.
Know it well.
Yeah.
We had those in the Jolly Greens, so I completely get it. Yeah.
So anyway, we went over to the site. The Navy said that they had been shot up and knocked their rudder out and had beached their boat onto the beach. And so the sailors were stuck and they were under fire. And so we rolled in, and it was an area that was like a horseshoe in the river. And right in the center of the horseshoe was that APC that the VC had captured. They had a minigun right in the center. And on the left side of the banks was a Chinese 51 caliber. On the right side of it was another 51 caliber. So they had triangulated us perfectly.
Yeah.
And he sucked us right in. And we later found out that was a setup specifically to try and shoot us down, the sea wolves. So anyway, we rolled in on the first run, excuse me, on the first run. And we just took so much fire. It was coming from the minigun and coming from the Chinese 51 cals. And we got enveloped. The trail ship behind us said that we thought you were shot down. So it was just a solid blanket of red tracers had enveloped our air. They lost sight of us, and they were right behind us. And when the pilot rolled off of our chute, you start out at about 800 feet and you go down to about 200 feet is where you break off. When we broke off, the pilot actually turned us upside down. And Houthis don't normally fly upside down. And the reason we know that is because I took rounds through the top of the rotor blade.
He just broke so hard, is what you're saying.
He did. And maybe kind of a panic a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty scary, but
luckily he didn't rip the rotors off.
Well, yeah. I mean, when he rolled us upside down, I looked over my left shoulder and I saw trees above my head.
Wow.
And we went into blade stall. All the red lights came on. The siren came on in the cockpit. And I reached over and I hit the pilot's arm and I said, "I've got the aircraft." And that is the last thing I remember.
Wow.
Now, the crew chiefs in the back, I had two door gunners in the back, and they said that I managed to roll the helicopter. I lowered the power, got my rotor RPM back, and recovered. They said they could reach out and touch the water of the rice paddy. It was that close when we stopped. When I stopped,
I believe it. Yeah.
Hold on. So it was less than 40 feet. Probably around 10 or 15 feet when I finally got everything under control, and then took a breath and we flew away.
So you didn't have any like aircraft damage in the engine or transmission or anything?
No. The only thing that happened was the rounds going through the rotor blade.
Wow.
And so we regrouped off to the probably a half a mile away. The trail ship came up and said, "My God, we can't believe you guys are alive. We thought you were gone." And so we decided, we talked about what are we going to do, because the firepower was just unbelievable. But the boats were still beached onto the shore, and there were still sailors out there getting shot at. So we said, we just got to go back. And so we went back another 3 or 4 runs. When the thing that probably saved us after that was a pair of Black Pony OV-10s from our base in Bentui were in the area and heard the call, the firefight and stuff, and came up. And they had some bigger ordnance and stuff, and they helped get us out, and the other guys kind of quit shooting after the big guys got on site. But later on that night, actually right after the Black Ponies came, there was over 150 VC in a big field, the rice paddy area, that were running away from the river, and we caught them on searchlights and just emptied everything we had. I have no idea how many we killed that night, but there were a lot. But anyway, that was my claim to fame.
I can feel the tension in your voice when you're telling that story. Wow. Yeah.
It was all, I mean, you'll know this. It was all training. It was all memory, remote memory, because how I could roll that thing level and regain RPM, and fly it away. It was just all remote, and I don't recall it actually me doing it. It just that's what it did.
Wow.
So anyway,
great story. You've got some more.
I do. There's a couple things that I wanted to mention. Our squadron turned out to be at the end of the war, after 6 years that our squadron was in existence, we were the highest decorated naval aviation squadron in history.
Wow, that's saying something from World War II.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. And there were over 78,000 missions that we flew, 131,000 flight hours, and there's 4,000 confirmed kills and another 3,000 probable, and just on and on. And then the guys, we had 5 Navy Crosses in our squadron, and 31 Silver Stars, 2 Legion of Merits, 5 Navy and Marine Corps medals, and 219 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and then it just keeps going down.
Wow. Impressive.
So it was something. And then my personal experience there was, let's see, I had 120 total flight hours, 543 combat hours, 524 combat missions, and 291 night flying hours.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That was a lot.
It's going to be a good day.
on, baby? Shipping beef this Monday. We do have a little bit left available here. Check us out, familyfarmbeefbox.com. Thanks. Have a good day.
So anyway, a couple other interesting things. I was from West Virginia, and I discovered that that per capita there were more West Virginians sent to the Vietnam War and lost their lives than any other state per capita. I was drafted A1 or 1A while I was in college. I was deferred while I was in school, and since I graduated, I was going to go to Vietnam. I was a 1A going right into the Army, I'm sure. And that's why I joined the Navy, to try and stay out of Vietnam. And I figured being on a Navy ship would be a lot safer in the long run. But as it turns out, I ended up volunteering to go to Vietnam, and in fact, to a combat squadron. So there was one interesting part about the Sea Wolves also. At one time, we had 128 officers in our 9 detachments. 128 officers. 103 of us were Lieutenant JGs.
Jeez.
So very young.
Very young. Very young.
And even our enlisted guys, I don't think any of them had over 3 years in service. And they were all trained not only as door gunners, but also as maintainers. So when we were out on detachment, if we could fix it, we had to fix it on site if we could. It was a major effort to get that airplane back to our headquarters.
It's not really how old you are. It's what you're given to do, and guys just grow into the role quickly. Even if you're 20 years old.
You do, and it's amazing the maturity level that you gain quick. Our door gunners were probably the backbone of our squadron. They were the heroes of the squadron. Those guys could shoot like you wouldn't believe, standing out on the skid and reaching underneath the helicopter to shoot behind you. And those guys were just amazing.
Hope you enjoyed the SCIF, the history portion there. We'll continue to do this the last part of the show because I think history is very important. We're going to do all kinds of history, but to bring you something that you may not know to help you in your day. Really hope you enjoyed the SCIF today. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, 10 to noon. Put cdm.press in your daily scan. Appreciate you, and we'll see you tomorrow.